Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As we hit the middle of July, it's time to check with our gardening experts. From growing vegetables and flowers or just doing work around the yard, our experts are here with tips to help resolve any problems that might be cropping up. It's always a pleasure to welcome Leonard Perry and Ann Hazelrig from the University of Vermont. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Now, Leonard, you brought some beautiful flowers to start off with.
Always have to bring a pretty flower. It's hard to just bring one. But this is courtesy this perennial of Full Circle Gardens in Essex Center, and it's an orange butterfly weed or orange milkweed, and it is in the milkweed family, but it is obviously orange, but it's attractive to butterflies, and so that's one the going things for it. It's a perennial, it's hardy, it does not like wet soil, and it's got a taproot, which means it grows deep, doesn't like to be moved. So, but other than that, it's a great plant, and the Perennial Plant Association each year names a perennial of the year. This is the winner for this year.
Nice. All right, well, after last month's show, you had some viewer questions, and one had to do with a plum tree.
You're right. Mary Forrest has a plum tree with this nasty growth. Brought a picture of one. It's a black knot fungus, and probably knows a little bit more about this, but basically, as you can see, very gnarly. Luckily, it doesn't spread throughout the tree, but so you see that, cut it off, go back about 4 inches toward the tree. The problem is if you get a whole tree full of this, she said, you know, what do you have left when you prune it off? Then you might want to replace it with a resistant variety. There are resistant varieties out there. Part of the problem is a lot of these spores will blow in from neighbors' trees or wild plum trees too. So you can use sprays, but you have to start early in the season, and it gets kind of complicated, the timing with the life cycle of the fungus in the tree. So if you do look for a fruit tree spray at the home store you go to and read the label, follow the directions on that.
And you also had another question?
Right, so that was one question, and then Klaus wrote in, has this weed taking over his flower garden, spreading to his veg gardens, and this is a common weed. Brought a picture of this that he sent in, and it's the bedstraw weed. This is the perennial, that means it comes back each year, versus the annual. Annual has rough stems, this has smooth stems, so it's sometimes called this smooth bedstraw. Bedstraw because the early colonists actually used it to stuff their beds with. So, but part of the problem is it has all these little roots that spread all through the soil, so if you pull it out, you're probably going to leave some roots, so you're going to be fighting it for a few years. Early in the season, you can use some herbicide, something like the Roundup or the organic burnout herbicide. Just be careful, that can damage other plants too, and just follow the directions on those. But now cultivating, keeping it from going to seed, or that'll solve a lot of the problem right there.
Okay, Ann, what kinds of questions or issues are you dealing with in the UVM clinic?
Well, right now, I think one thing we can look for is some of the tomato leaf spot diseases, and we've had a pretty rainy spring, so I expect we're going to have a big summer for that. And what you'll see is just on the lower leaves of your tomato plants, you'll see these circular spots caused by a couple different fungi. It doesn't matter which ones, but they start lower in the plant, and then each rain we have, they'll sort of work their way up the plant.
Oh, really?
And that usually shows up around the first week in July, so I expect people are seeing it now. What you can do, make sure your tomatoes are staked so that you can improve air circulation so they don't the leaves don't stay wet. Also, don't water at night. Don't overhead sprinkler, use a sprinkler at night. Make sure they go into the evening dry. And there are fungicides you can use, but a lot of times you can just manage it.
Watching the watering.
Exactly, and staking. And then in my garden, by the time they're so infected, I'm done with tomatoes anyway.
Okay, now you brought some other pictures of some pests.
The other thing we're seeing, sort of an uptick this year, is viburnum leaf beetle, and it showed up about 10 years ago, and it's really a bad pest on viburnum, specifically on viburnum, because both the larvae and the adult cause damage. The larvae causes that, the holes and skeletonization of the leaves in May and June, and now the adult beetles should be coming out. So when you shake the plant, you can sort of shake them off, but really the only time to control the pest is when the larvae are young and small.
And can you see them when they're that
Yeah,
small?
you can. You have to go out and look, though. That's the thing. You've got to go look for them and pick them off. But that's the time to control them.
Okay, great. And so, Leonard, every month you seem to bring a new tool or toy with you. What have you got with us
Okay,
today?
we have some toys here. We often talk about attracting birds. Well, I've got some birds, some woodpeckers that I'd rather get away from the shingles, from the eaves of the house. Yeah, well, they start tapping. They started on the eaves, the wooden eaves, and there may be insects. So that's a sign you need to check for that. Get a roofer out. But now they're going for the asphalt shingles, and we had Thomas in Fairfax write in that he has them going for the cedar shingles and what to do. Well, what I do is go out. I have this water cannon here. It's like a big syringe. It pulls up all this water and then shoots about 40 feet up in the air. That really scares them. So that, at least for a time being, they'll come back. So when I get a roofer out to check the house, I'm going to get this holographic tape. I've got a friend that's hung this like berry growers do. It kind of reflects in the light and tends to scare them away. Hopefully that'll scare them. Be decorating our house. I'm not sure my wife will like that, but at least it might protect it. So those are a couple things I'm doing.
Let's move on to hummingbirds.
We've talked about hummingbirds before. They're all over. They're great. Those same dumb woodpeckers had started found the sugar water, and addicted like to soda, so they're going for that. So I tried some things. I got these last year. This is the first one. It just hangs on this, and the whole idea is the hummingbird can fly and drink the water out, but this thing turns, and so the woodpecker can't get on there. It was supposedly weighted, but it didn't really want to stay there, and so the fluid's here and the bird can't get in or get it. So anyway, that wasn't very effective. So then the next one I tried, and this is pretty effective. It doesn't hold a whole lot, but this hangs, and you see the bird has to come in here. A woodpecker, again, can't get a perch and really get in there, but the hummingbird has to fly and get this liquid through there. So that's pretty effective. But the one I found still works the best is the old-fashioned one here, and this is a newer and improved version. It has a wider base when you unscrew it to take it off. Ants can get in, so they go, how they find from the ground sugar water up here, I don't know, but they come up the post. What I was doing, and you can do, is the lower part of the post, grease it with something like Vaseline. That'll help. But you have to kind of keep applying it. Don't put it on top where birds might perch. This actually has a little indentation, a moat. You put water in it, and the ants drown in that, you see. So, but the hummingbirds like this.
A full-time job.
Yeah, it's got the bee guards, keeps the bees from getting in, and they love these perches. They can sit and just drink and drink. They don't, and right now, this will be drained in a couple of days.
Yep, which actually brings up a good point, is you should change the water often.
You should change it often, every few days, especially when it's warm. It'll get cloudy. That can make them sick. When you do, that's important. What you should use is 1 part sugar. You make up your own to 4 parts water, okay? And don't use artificial sugar. And don't use food coloring, just regular sugar.
No food coloring.
Yeah, no food coloring.
Had to do
well, you
red.
see it come with the red, but you don't. It's the red they're attracted to there, and experts say don't use that, and don't use the artificial sugar, just regular sugar.
Yep, it's as easy as that.
Yeah.
And so, Anne, you have a few more things that you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, another thing that's coming out right now, I've gotten some calls on and pictures on what are these eggs on the undersides of my cucumber leaves, and it's the squash bug, and it lays eggs right in the crotch angle between the 2 veins on the, I've got a picture of that, that we, well that's, nope, let's go back to the squash eggs. They're sort of barrel shaped and they're sort of brownish bronzish. So when they hatch, they hatch into these gray nymphs with long black legs, and they look kind of spidery to me. Yeah, those are the eggs. Very distinctive, always in that crotch angle of the veins. And then they hatch into these gray nymphs, and they're just ugly, and they congregate around the bottom of the plant, and they can pierce, and they have piercing sucking mouth parts, and then they can cause damage, stunting in the plant. And this is what the adult looks like. So basically, and that laying the eggs. So check on the undersides of your cucumber leaves now, and just squish those eggs. That's the easiest way to control them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I have another pest on cucumber, also that people are calling about, striped cucumber beetle. It's got yellow and black stripes. I've got a picture.
Yeah, you really can't miss that.
Yeah, and boy, those guys, if you put your plants out early or direct seed them, these guys can just defoliate the plant. So the best thing to do is grow transplants for your cucumbers, put them out later, and then use row covers just to exclude that.
And what are we seeing here?
Oh, this is another one that's a big problem right now. If you go back one slide, it's called the onion leek moth, and it's a pretty new pest. Yeah, and what we're seeing is if you grow garlic, they really like the garlic scapes.
Yep.
And the moth lays an egg, and the little larvae feeds in hollow stems. And if you open up that garlic scape and pull it apart, you'll see the larvae inside and the frass. So if you do see that, hand pick those garlic scapes and destroy them. And then again, next time you plant garlic, use row covers to exclude this pest.
Okay. Now, another thing that people have been talking a lot about are huge plants that you usually see along the roads. Big, huge plants, yellow heads. Poison parsnip?
It's the wild parsnip. Yeah, it's a beauty, but it's very invasive. And as you see here in the picture, I know Will was asking about this, a producer. You see them everywhere now. I had one maybe 10, 15 years ago that came in, and now they're everywhere. That's part of the problem. Once they come in, I've got 6, 7 foot tall grass. They just seed right in. If it's sunny, they come up and they just start taking over. They take over veg gardens. And here's actually the flower close up that Will brought in. It's in the carrot family, so it's, that umbel type, it's called. And it's like kind of an open umbrella kind of thing, upside down. But anyway, that's the flower. It's starting to bloom now. In about 3 weeks, it'll make the seeds. It will spread everywhere. So the thing you want to do is cut it, but be careful, because
I was going to say you're handling that with bare hands, but I didn't think you're supposed to do that.
Well, it's not poison ivy, but I'm not getting the sap on me, and that's the tricky part of the stem. You can't eat the root, of course. It's a parsnip, but any of the top part, if you're weed whacking, be very careful too. Cutting it, use long sleeves and gloves. That sap, if it gets on your skin, can cause a rash, and I've heard some people have it a year later. I mean, the scars from that. It really.
And the sun activates
And the
that.
sun activates it, so it's what it's called phyto plant, photo light dermatitis rash. So it's that's the word for it. So it has to be in the sunlight. But if you get in here, it wouldn't. But if I go out in the sun and get the sap on me, then I better be careful. So, and the problem is it gets in hay fields, gets mixed in with the hay. Livestock eat it, and then they can get sunburn just from that sap, compounds getting in their body. So farmers don't like to see that, especially in hay fields. So.
Right, so if you see this in your yard, it's best to get rid of it.
Yeah, the best to get rid of it. It is a biennial, which means the first year it makes a rosette. So there's probably a lot of little rosettes, seeds. And then the next year it sends up those huge shoots we saw, and then flowers, seeds, and then dies. So if you cut it now, it'll do two things. Hopefully kill that mother plant there, but it'll keep all those seeds from forming and spreading. But with it so much around, the problem is, even if you do that for a couple of years, you may still see them because they're blowing in those seeds. So we have it so prevalent now. It's just something you have to keep on track of, but at least that's a good way to kind of really knock the populations down.
Is that something that you hear about at the clinic? Do people
Oh yeah,
call
a
about
lot.
that?
We get a lot of pictures and to ID the plant. But it looks like this one has already started producing seed, right?
Well, some of them, it started, say a lot of them have just, the buds are just coming out.
Oh, okay.
And they're still closed up, but they turn brown.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like
That's
the
when
carrot
they're-
seeds when they're,
Yeah.
and it's about a 3-week process. So you've got a little window of time to get on it.
Okay.
But I always intend to, but never get around to
I've
it.
heard if you cut it too early in the season, it can make a second crown.
That's
So
true,
that's, you really want to do it right before it flowers.
Exactly,
Or
that's
just,
a good point.
yeah.
If you cut it too early, it'll just resprout. Say, oh, I need to resprout, and it'll
And make
have
another,
time to do it
yeah.
and make another one.
And then once you kind of bag it and dispose of it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's got seeds on it, if it doesn't, it's not going to really be much
just
of
leave it, yeah.
Just leave it, yeah.
Now, if folks have questions, they can go to your website as well.
Right, Perry's Perennial pages. I've got more on all these different topics there. perrysperennials.info.
And if gardeners have questions, the UVM Extension Master Gardener
Call
website.
The helpline. We're busy, busy, busy. So we'll get to your questions eventually.
And
so.
there is someone there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We have 2 master gardeners on site every Monday through Thursday.
And so it's a
From
good-
9 to noon.
So it's a
Yeah,
good
and they're on the,
resource.
yeah, it's great. They're on the phone constantly.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us today. That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.